what you did, isn't it, Suzanne? Why did you beat up your partner?
Well, Robert, I was pregnant and I hadn't had a relationship long.
I went to counselling, you know, I got like self-help tapes. I went every which way, every route.
Because of the recognition that you had of the effect, well, you got kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were concerned not to put the kids through what you went through.
Yeah.
Right. And you went through what? You talked about going to your bedroom with a knot in your stomach. What's all that about?
Oh, the feeling is so hard to explain. It's, I think from a child's perspective, it's almost like a bereavement. It's almost like you're literally losing a parent.
Did you feel that?
No, not really.
What did you feel then?
Lost. My parents divorced when I was a baby. It wasn't until I was growing up that I realised what had happened, and it affected me in my late teenage years because I was getting in trouble with the police, in and out of prison.
What do you mean it affected you? How did it affect you?
It always felt like I had no one at home to speak to about my problems.
You had a mum, or who were you with, mum or dad?
My dad.
You were with your dad? Because what, because your mum had left, or...?
She disappeared, yeah.
Right. And when did you first realise that your mum had disappeared? When did you first know, or told, or...?
When I started school.
At about 5 or 6. Can you remember that?
Vaguely, not.
You don't remember your mother leaving, but you suddenly remember. And you first. When did you first know why that she'd gone and that she'd left you?
You got all kids at school, you know, talking about their mums taking them places. I ain't got a mum.
And that's when you realised, and presumably that's when your dad told you why she'd left or what had happened.
It wasn't actually my dad; it was my grandparents that told me.
Your grandparents told when did they tell you? Can you remember that?
I can remember it vaguely. When I was in school, you know, where's my mum? Oh, she walked out, yeah.
What do you feel when they said that? She walked out, or is that your words now?
That's what they said.
What did you feel?
She walked out, yeah.
How old were you when they said that?
I must have been 5, 6, 7.
She walked out on you?
Yeah, she walked out on me and my sister.
No, that's what they said, you. She walked out on you, not walked out on your dad.
She walked out on because she couldn't cope with me and my sister.
Okay.
She was too young.
So what did you feel then?
At the time, I didn't feel anything. But when, you know, I asked my dad about it, he kept trying to put me off. I asked other relatives about it, you know, they told me little bits and bobs. And then it hit me, you know, I went round.
When it hit you, what did you feel? You said unloved, unwanted, rejected. Those are the words that have been used by Jane and Deborah.
All of them, yeah.
All of that.
I felt all
and you're
of
saying that's what made you go off the rails, get into trouble, go into prison?
Yeah.
Letitia, is that what happens to kids?
Not always. I mean, clearly divorce does have quite a devastating effect on all the people involved in it. But
We're talking about the kids, though.
Yes, we are talking about the kids, but I mean, certainly I work for a mediation charity, and we do believe that it's important that when parents have decided to separate, that they involve the children in terms of telling them what's going on.
Yeah, of course, that seems obvious, but why? What's the effect on the kids?
The effects on the kids are varied and numerous.
From what age?
From any age.
What?
Actually.
18 months?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. Because when a loving relationship comes to an end, there are all sorts of ways in which that can be felt. And
by
certainly
the child.
By the child.
By a small
and certainly
child.
A baby can tell if the mother is unhappy, if there is tension in the home. So at any age, it does affect the children. I think that we sometimes feel that when we're dealing with older children, that they have less of a need to know. And that can be a mistake, because certainly I think the experiences we've heard earlier shows that it does affect you very deeply. And the question I wanted to ask was, have you ever talked to your father about the fact that you felt abandoned?
Yes.
And how did that conversation go?
Well, I actually dealt with it at being the age of 15. I actually was extremely arrogant with him, annoying, tried to
when he wanted to do something, I'd deliberately not do it. And this went on for 6 months, until one day he actually hit his fist on the wall and one little tear came out of his eye. And at that moment, I knew that I had got to him and that he did actually love me.
Mm-hmm.
Did you realise she was going through this trauma, Judy?
Well, I didn't.
Why?
And it makes me
Why?
very sad, because I think that I was bound up in my own recovery and my own feelings, and I think that I tended to ignore, in hindsight, what my children were going through, because I have a son as well. It was only about a year later, when I thought that everything was all right with the children, it was about a year later that I realised, because of her behaviour, that things were not good.
What kind of behaviour?
She was becoming very angry and contemptuous, and I guess I felt maybe this is
Of
to do...
you?
Yes, I think so. But
She was angry with you?
I think she was
She's
angry
taking
with
it
me.
out on you?
Yes.
Yeah, she's
Yes.
asserting not just the normal kind of rebellion and assertion of the,
Yes.
of the juvenile teenager, but she probably hated you.
Yes, I
Yeah?
think she did. And of
You're
course,
smiling when I use that word.
Well,
it's a
yes.
horrible word,
Yes.
but I don't know why I used it. But I suddenly
I've
kind
used
of...
that word many
I
times.
felt it suddenly seemed appropriate, even to your mum, who is sitting there, and obviously you get on well together, but
Yeah.
you hated her.
I did, yes. I did go through periods of that. But
Both of them you hated.
yes.
You weren't distinguishing who was to blame.
No.
No, but that's
I was
interesting.
at the beginning. It was
Yes.
definitely my dad, because he was the one who left.
Because he was the one who
and
was
I saw
moving
that
out there,
yeah.
or being made to leave,
Yeah.
or whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing you're saying is that you weren't distinguishing blame. You weren't interested in blame. They were both to blame.
Yes.
And you hated them both for that. Judy, looking back on it now, would you have acted differently?
yes, definitely.
Oh, really?
Definitely. But at the time, one, I wasn't aware really, I guess, how I should respond to the children. But secondly, as I said, I was too involved in my own getting over it. But yes, I wish now that I'd spent time listening to them and listening to
Would
how
that have made any
they
difference if
really
you'd listened
felt.
to them?
I don't know.
Would you have acted differently?
I thought at the time that I was doing all the right things.
But you know you weren't now.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
And I knew
know
then,
now.
because she changed.
You were 15 and you knew.
Yes, because she changed. She became... I know now that it was because she thought my brother and I were going to go off the rails. And she became very strict and wouldn't let me go out, and you're not to do this and you're not to do... And I thought if they were together, then this wouldn't be happening.
But I think you need to give yourself a break, because what you've talked about is a lot of the things that happen in any family, and people have traumas and they get through them the best they can, because your mum was doing what she thought was the best.
Absolutely.
But you can spend a lot of time worrying about what happened in the past. And I would guess that you're a very capable, creative, attractive, intelligent person who can do a lot with the future.
Oh, he fancies you.
You can't do a lot about the past.
This isn't a dating one. You are not going to the Dorchester, you two.
It's important to respect your reality, because I know that it must have been tough, but I've worked with a lot of people as a family mediator, and you've got to be able to look to the future rather than the past, because
Well, I
you
do
can't change the
now.
past.
I do now look to the future, but you know, I still, as I said before, this emotionally damaged. There is an element of that, the scarring. It's still there.
But how do you know
and-
it's caused by that, and not by the traumas of growing up, which is a tough enough business as it is?
Excuse me, can I have you come from parents who are divorced? Have you?
You have to explain.
Tell me.
No, the answer is no.
Yeah.
You haven't, so you don't know what you're talking about.
You can tell the answer was
basically.
no. It's the hesitation.
I want to respect your
You have
experience.
to live it to understand it.
Of course,
John,
and I'm not
hang on,
qualified as you.
John.
See,
No,
my
John.
dad was the apple of my eye. And at 18 years of age, when he come to my bedroom and knocked on my door and said, he just come in and he was crying, and I knew. And for him to leave me, that is the most... I wish he would have gone when I was younger, so I didn't understand. At 18, he broke my heart.
Yeah, but
and
would
now
you
at
rather your mum
29...
and dad to stay together just to keep you happy, or both go off and lead happier
Just to
lives
keep
and you
her
be
happy?
happier
He
seeing
stayed
them
to
both
keep me happy, and he didn't. He made me worse.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
He's
That's what I'm
damaged
saying.
my life. It took me 10 years to come to terms with it, and I spoke to my dad and he wasn't interested.
Did you have no idea that there was any problems there to start with? I mean, speaking
No.
to Jane, it was obviously a shock
Like
for
Jane,
you.
Hang on.
And you
I
didn't,
thought it was...
I can't help but think, you know, the fact that all of these people have just suddenly told the child when they're leaving and they've had no idea that there's any problem before that, whether that adds to the trauma of it.
Oh, I'm sure it does in some ways, although having said that, if you live in a family where there's arguments all the time, that's going to affect you.
Yeah.
Whatever. But you're nodding your head. Do you disagree with me?
Well, I think if a couple, no matter how many years they are married or how many children they've got, if they get to a point where they aren't happy living together, then they've got to look at how much longer they're going to live, basically. If they're in the 40s, they'll probably go on till about the 70s, and make a new life for themselves, because eventually your children grow up and they live their own lives. They're not going to be hanging on to you.
I do agree with you there.
So therefore, if you can make, I don't mean a divorce where both parties can sort of get on and still love your children and show affection to your children, be there for your children regardless of the age, and both parents try and give each other time for the child and not run each other down to the child or use the child as a pawn in a game where you're not seeing him at Christmas because I'm having him and vice versa. Then you're looking at your child and trying to help your child rather than just thinking of yourself.
So you're saying, though, Pauline, that in those circumstances, when you've got problems in the relationship, what comes first is you, your life.
In some ways.
Not the kids, because the kids, you said, grow up and leave.
They do, yeah.
So what do you? If I asked you, should you stay for the sake of the kids? You're going to say no.
I'm going to say no, yeah.
I think you should. Don, Robert, talk to
I think you should.
Talk to her.
I'm going to say no, but I think you've got to look also at your own life, but...
Well, you've got to put your children's life first. It's imperative. And if you can't make a go of it, you should never have children. That's my honest opinion.
Hang on, Letitia, she's talking to Pauline.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of people have children when they're young, and a lot of people have children when they're not married, and they don't think about whether they have a child before they have a child. They don't know how your life.
That's the problem. That's why there's so much divorce now. They don't look beyond the noses, people now.
Yeah, but I was married a good well over 20 years, so it's not as though it was a 12-month, 15-month
Well, no, that's true, but I'm talking more about...
But I'm on about the rest of my life. I've got to look at the rest of my life as well. I mean, this is my daughter.
It's my, you're saying, my.
Yes.
If you said that to a kid, you say, my, looking at self.
But then
the kids didn't ask you to be born.
No, true.
You've got the kids.
Yeah. This is what I tell my mother, John.
They're called a responsibility.
Well, this gentleman was on about his mother. You said your mother killed herself.
No, she did. She had 2 broken marriages, and it affected me very much when I was a child. And I got quite bitter against her. When I was older, of course, I realised what a struggle she'd had, but I always felt badly towards my mother for ever divorcing in the first place. I never knew my father, and I was very bitter at one time, and I was a sensitive sort of lad, and it had a bad effect on me as well, but it certainly affected her in the long run. As I say, she took her life in the end.
I think I agree that the children should always be put first, but I'm actually divorced, and I thought about it a long time before I split up with my husband, and I believe totally that I have put my children first, but I still divorced through it, because staying together with my husband would not have been the best life for my children.
I'm not saying you should. Are you rationalising?
Yeah.
Are you saying that because that's what you want to believe, because it suits what you did?
No,
why would you feel if you've got Jane there at 32 or Don at whatever age Don is sitting there saying to you, I felt very bitter. Because I smiled at my mum at the time and I smiled at my dad at the time, because kids do, don't they? Kids are strong. Kids hide their feelings, but it doesn't mean they don't have them.
I can understand you feeling very bitter, and my son felt very bitter. He was 10 when we split up. He was very bitter. He hated me. He actually went
that's not going to affect him?
No, not now. I don't think it is.
I think he's stronger. You don't know, though, do you?
No.
Yeah.
None of us know what would have happened. All this is hypothetical because none of us know what would happen.
You do know. She knows. He knows.
She doesn't know how her life.
Knows.
No, she does not know how her life would have been if her parents had stayed together. She knows how her life is now. Her family have split up, and she puts blame on them for how her life has gone. My son knows his life as parents in 2 different houses. He doesn't know what his life would have been like if we'd stayed together. He'd have probably hated me for some other reason at that that time, probably, you know, I wouldn't have
No, they don't.
taken them.
Kids don't hate their moms.
When my son hated me...
Just think about it.
No, they can.
What for?
They
What for?
can.
No.
Lots of reasons.
No.
He could hate me because I was an alcoholic. He could
But
hate
yeah,
me
no. We're
for
talking
other
about
reasons.
normal mom. That's a different thing.
I came
Pamela.
from divorced parents. I was 10 at the time when my father left home. And I didn't feel so much as bitter as I felt hurt. Really hurt deep down inside. I'm not ashamed of telling you my age, I'm 57. But that hurt is still with me today, and it never leaves you. You should think of the children first.
I did find
my own marriage.
I've
been near divorced twice in my own marriage. I've had very traumatic times with a business and my husband and I, but we've thought of the children first. Yes. We weathered it, we talked about it, we did this. This is what you call a cuddle. A cuddle. Right. We cuddled and we talked.
And if you can make it work, it's fine, it's fantastic. If you can't make it work, and I knew I couldn't.
You've got to make it work.
You've got to make it work.
Hang on, I'll come back to you, Pamela.
Let's get to the bottom of this. Did you actually take a look at the suffering your children were suffering at the time, and did you actually say to yourself, look, should we discuss this?
Of course,
it's
not something you walk out of lightly.
No,
for goodness
absolutely
sake.
not.
I love my children more than anything in the world. They know that. Their father loves them more than anything in the world. They know that. They're two completely happily, well-balanced children now. And this is 5 years on from our divorce.
Yeah, I think in some cases you find there is some selfishness along the line.
We've all got
there is some selfishness.
We all have a certain amount of
selfishness.
We all have a certain amount of selfishness in us as human beings.
But not when your children are concerned. Not as far as your children are concerned, because they don't. They can't rationalise your selfishness.
But so, would you think it was better for two children to be in a family that's not full of love, not full of happiness, not full of good, positive
I agree.
feelings?
I have
my
two children
now are in
the same
two homes.
situation
They come
as
between
you.
my husband and myself, who are completely amicable, completely friendly.
Yes.
We carried on.
Go between two homes.
We carried on family holidays.
They go between two homes?
Yep, they've got two homes.
Like parcels?
No, not like parcels. Like two people in two loving relationships. I love them when they're with me. They're in a happy, loving environment. Building them with morals, with good standards, and all the rest of it. When they're with their father, they're in exactly the same situation. They're with a man who loves them dearly. They're in a nice, happy environment. When they see their father and me together, they see two people who totally respect and are very fond of each other, but could not live together.
Well, that's very much, that is identical to my situation.
And
now.
I don't,
I'm not saying for a moment that people should stay together, but what I'm saying is that I know how I was affected when my parents did split up. And
like
consequently, with my children, I have had an insight. Through that experience, I've been able to use what I felt positively as far as my children are concerned. And know that the need for them to know that they are wanted and loved and not rejected by either of us.
Yeah, I think that it was good in my case that my parents got divorced, because there was so much anger and tension in the house. It was sort of unbearable, and it really affected me, my education and everything. I did badly at school, and I was sort of in on myself. And so I thought, I mean, I know it was hard, but I think that now it's much better that my parents are divorced.
Pamela?
Surely it's better to spend...
Pamela?
I was 10 at the time, as I say, and I was a bit of a rebel. Later on, I got through boyfriends like nothing, but I used to sort of go with them for a little while and ditch them, because I felt that I was rejecting... I was getting back at the mouth.
You're getting revenge.
I was getting revenge.
Yeah.
But my father, I never heard a word from him when he left home. My mother was brilliant. I had a wonderful mother, and I had wonderful sisters. I had a wonderful family. But my father, well, I never got a birthday card or Christmas, and it used to hurt. Every birthday, every Christmas, it hurt inside. And you never get over it. You never get over it.
I think that's different from just your parents being divorced. You're actually feeling a loss because a parent is not following up the love that they have for that children. I think as long as the parents get divorced and the love and the support is still there from both parties, whether they be in different homes, then I think it's a lot less traumatic for the children to go through, and I think it gives them, you know, good grounding for the rest of their lives. They know that life is not ideal, basically.
I think that divorce is too easy now.
Yeah. Too easy.
We've been married 50 years and we've been faithful to each other in those 50 years. And our children are happy, and thank God our children are married and they're not divorced. And I have grandchildren grown up, and I think it's too easy. Young couples nowadays, as soon as they have a little argument, they're off. One of them's off.
Yeah. That's right.
You have to give and take. You have to give and take.
You've got to work
It's a thing you've got to work at and hold on to that as a bond. You know, just simple as that, regardless of your discrepancies with one another.
How long do you hold on to it, though?
That is a question.
How long to the point?
The fact still remains you work on it.
So what, did you hang on to the point where you've got no self-esteem left and you're that low and you're that miserable and that stressed that your children are feeling it?
What about your child if you've got children involved?
I think it's much
healthier. If you've got children involved, it still makes an effect on the child.
You just told us all the trauma that you've gone through. Your parents
Yeah, I did, and I understand it from a child's perspective.
Yes, that's right.
But having them in an environment where there's no love between the parents, there's arguments, etc., isn't healthy for them either.
You still take time out and work on it.
I did take time and work out on my marriage, and it just wasn't going to work.
I stayed with my ex long after really our marriage was broken down, partly because I was scared, and the other major part was because of my children. I'm very close to my children. I knew what they were going through, and I thought that it was better if I stayed. And I nearly sort of disintegrated totally, and it wasn't until my doctor said to me, if you don't split up from your husband, your children are not going to have you either.
Exactly.
So things can get. I think it's fine if you're very fortunate to be able to have a good marriage. That's great.
Yes, I do appreciate what you're saying in that respect.
But you know, when my children were on the way down, now they're up.
Yeah.
Now they're up, but we are divorced. So it's easy to say. I mean, my parents have a wonderful marriage, and I feel really guilty that I haven't got. You know, I'm a sort of broken up thing, really, and that's great. And I think that hopefully younger people will try and work hard, but it's no good if things are really down. It's just everything is going to go down the alley.
Yeah, I think there's a space where you've left yourself open to a situation where you're not looking at and you're saying to yourself, well, look, why don't I just get involved and try my best to make this work in any respect possible, right? If you don't, then there shouldn't be a marriage in the first place.
Oh, but you can't know that. It's difficult. When you're young, when you're very young and you get married, people change, circumstances change, you change, you have children. As a mother, whatever anybody says, when you have children, your role changes and the society's expectations of you change. And you couldn't possibly say that you've just got to sort of stay together for whatever.
Nobody begins a marriage with the expectation that they're going to get divorced.
No, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
you do make a vow, don't you?
So
you try your utmost best to keep it the best way possible.
You do indeed.
I think it all boils down to communication. Communication has a lot to do with a marriage as well. You may have someone where you can't communicate with. And you
like him, don't you? You do like him.
You got a lot of communication. It's not communication. It's all the fancy girls with the short skirts in the offices.
But you don't have to demonstrate it here for us, you know. You're not pulling your skirts up on Kilroy. I mean, we've had the other fellas, haven't we? I thought it was just the men that came here and kind of made exhibition of themselves. And we don't want any of that too. I am being very facetious, of course, because she's a lovely woman. Yeah. We're having a bit of an argy-bargy here about what's best for the kids when the two of you don't want to live with each other anymore, and whether you should be staying there even if it's a difficult, a hostile environment for the sake of the kids, or whether, as some of us, I think it's Sue here, and my other friends say, no, you have to go your separate ways, and maybe that's what's best for the kids. But kids are in a difficult position though, aren't they? Because kids kind of then have to... They're almost put in a position of needing to take sides.
Shouldn't take sides. Taking sides is very, very wrong. My mother took sides. My dad was the evil one for years and years and years. My dad was absolutely evil, and the things she said about him were completely untrue. I've actually been divorced twice. This is my son from my second marriage, and I've tried very, very hard not to take sides and to paint his dad in an evil light.
Because of what you've gone through yourself?
What I've gone through, yes.
Because you were alienated from your dad because of the way your mother...
Yeah, I had a very low opinion of my dad, yes.
Because of the way she talked about him?
And I didn't unfortunately have an opportunity to get his side of things at the time.
And then what about you, Sean? Do you feel torn between your mum and your dad?
No, because I saw what my dad was like, and basically I saw what he put my mum through, and at the end of the day...
So you have taken sides?
Well, I haven't taken sides. My dad walked out on me. I felt rejected, you know. He walked out.
He walked out. He didn't walk out on you, did he?
Well,
he walked out on your mum, but you're saying he walked out on you, just like you feel, just like Jane feels that he walked out on you too. But presumably his dad wouldn't say he didn't. He might say to you, "I don't love your mum anymore, and I can't help that," which presumably what Jane's dad must have said. I don't know whether it's as straightforwardly as that, but to Jane. But he would also have said, presumably, "But I still love you. I'll always love you."
You never told
I can't help but loving you. He never told you that.
No, I come back one day, he's not there. So.
But do you ever see him?
Well, last 3 months I've been seeing him, but before that, 7 years I haven't seen him.
Why?
Just never kept in contact. He was...
Because he didn't, or because was it you, Mum? You didn't have any to do with keeping him dad away from...
He didn't want to know. No, he didn't.
What happens when kids are in this situation of having to take sides, really, aren't you, even if you do it just to yourself?
Well, my situation is slightly different. I was 6 months old when my mother took me away to live with her parents, my grandparents. And it wasn't until I was 10 years old that I met my father just once, because it was a very sad upbringing. It was a long time ago. I'm 55. So we're talking of a long time ago when standards were different. And she would say to me, "He's a devil, I know I mustn't swear on this programme, but she used to about him. And I'm going to send you back to him." And I got a bit scared. I got very scared. And one day, I was 10, I said, "Let me see him." And it was all handled in a very clumsy way. Instead of writing and saying, "Albert, your daughter wants to see you," we turned up one day on his doorstep on a Sunday afternoon with her parents, my grandparents at the gate, and her brother. And the poor man opened the door, and there was his daughter, pigtails he hadn't seen for 9.5 years, and his wife, and over the shoulder, his in-laws, all in one hit on Sunday afternoon. And...
Was he pleased to see you?
No. The first thing he did was let the dog out, and that was to give him time to think. Catch my dog. And so Mother and I, that was the introduction, went tearing down the road after this wretched dog. And when we came back, there was evidence in the house of children. I saw toys on the stairs. And I don't think we were there for more than 10 minutes. And when various people here have said it affects you for the rest of your life, it does. Yeah, because even now, I can feel that all these years later. And
what can you feel?
I can feel hurt, pain, rejection. He didn't bend down and say, "Here's my girl, I haven't seen her for..." anything like that. In fact, I stood behind him, and he and my mother were talking, and say we didn't even sit down, or a cup of tea, nothing. And then she said, "Well, we'll go now. Shake hands with your father." And that felt really strange.
I think it gives you a negative perspective to men, though.
Oh, 100% I agree, yes. Oh, it's ruined my life. I know that.
Why?
Because, like a lot of other people have said here today, they find trouble making relationships. I know, even to today, I go to people who reject me, be it man or woman, still.
Why?
Because that is what I understand and know.
Pamela?
I felt guilty, actually. I felt guilty. I thought it was my fault. I didn't blame my parents, but I felt it was my fault that they'd split up. And I had trouble with relationships from then onwards, but
Were you,
I never
were
saw
you
my
in a
father.
position where you had to take sides, or did you feel you had to take sides?
I did. I felt...
Because that's an invidious thing to do to a kid, isn't it?
Really,
the
because,
trauma of,
yeah.
of the split is bad
He was
enough.
a demon for going away. He went and left, yeah.
Sorry?
He left my mum. So he was a demon. Yeah. He was no good.
What, did your mum tell you he was a demon? Or?
Well, from the family, the family said he was...
her mum and dad would say... Because obviously your mum would feel that he was a demon, naturally, if he's left her or if he's met another woman. But she doesn't have to tell you that, does she? Or does she?
No, she didn't actually say in so many words, but it was... I felt that he was to blame, but I didn't take sides at the time. As I say, it was all inward and it was my fault, so I didn't take sides at all.
When did you discover that he wasn't a demon then?
Well, as I grew up, as I got older, at the age of 28, I tried to take my own life. I tried to commit suicide. I was so depressed.
Was
I had bouts of depression.
Because of what happened?
Well, the psychiatrist, I had to see them, and it's compulsory, and he said to me, "Did you come from a divorced marriage, parents?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What's that got to do with it?" He said, "Oh, my dear," he said, "it can come out." I said, "Well, I'm 28." He said, "But that doesn't matter." He said, "It can come out now."
But it's not straightforward divorce, is it? They've been abandoned, basically. It's not a divorce where both parties are involved, both parents.
Well, you had to take sides. Did you have to take sides? Do you feel...
I don't feel that it's given me any problems.
At all?
When my parents divorced.
And
no,
you haven't
in fact, I think they're better for it, because why should you expect them to just go on being miserable with
But how old were you?
I was older, I was 20.
Oh, you're 20. It's a different thing at 20, because you've already matured. You've gone through your adolescence. You've gone through puberty, all the rest of it, all the things. It is. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt or what have you. Of course, it would hurt me if both my parents were still alive and they got divorced now. Of course, but it wouldn't traumatise me in the way that some have forever. Because clearly, I've already lived my life and
that
not
depends
lived
the way it's handled, though.
Of
At the end of the day.
Right. Well, if it's handled the way that you see Sue's handled it, she's got two homes maybe, but they are loving and they're communicating and they're trying to be amicable, and she's treating her former husband with respect and she's treating him with respect. That is going to ameliorate the difficulties, but it won't eradicate them, will it?
No, but my children have never experienced the feeling of rejection. They haven't had to cope with rejection. My daughter has never felt she's taken sides at all. My son felt, when I first actually had a boyfriend, which was quite a while after we divorced anyway, my son went through
more than a week?
About 2 years. My son then came across a problem there.
Well, it's only it takes a week these days. It's all right, you like go tut tut tut. No, she did very well, 2 years.
But he felt he liked the new friend in my life, but he felt to like him was somehow kind of letting his father down. Yeah, it was like...
Of course.
And he had to kind of cope with that.
He'll feel guilty. He will feel guilty now about... I had a stepfather. I had a because my father was killed in action during the war, but my mum married his best friend, and he brought me up as his son. That's Kilroy. That's where the Kilroy comes from. And he loved me. I was his son, absolutely. And but whenever I went to my... the Silk family, I felt I was being disloyal to my stepfather. He used to tell me to go. He used to make me keep touch with my own father's family because he was his best friend before he was killed. But nevertheless, I felt guilty. I felt sometimes I didn't talk about that I'd been there. I didn't talk about my gran, talking about her son, my dad, because she'd tell me all about my dad. When I came home, I didn't tell my stepfather that, because I felt it was Now that was, in that situation, it must be even worse for your son.
Well, my son found it hard
I'm
when
not
he was
trying this to depress you, but you have to understand
what
he's going to go through.
Yeah, and I did understand it at the time as well. I could see his point of view. Luckily, we are very close, and although he was about 12, I suppose, at the time, he actually came to me and said to me, "I'm finding this really hard to cope with. because I'm torn in the middle. When I go down Dad's house, I'm so scared to let out this bloke's name in case I say we went somewhere with Keith or whatever. You know, he was so frightened to let out this bloke's name because he knew that might hurt his father, and he was disloyal. If you like this bloke, does that mean he likes his father less? I mean, as adults, no, we realise, but as a 12-year-old, he did have this conflict.
Well, it was the other way around for me, actually, in the fact that I actually couldn't understand why when I went to see my mother's family, they didn't mention my dad at all, and why when I went to my dad's family, they wouldn't mention my mum. And I thought, they might not be together, but it's still my dad or it's still my mum. Why aren't you talking?
And they're still the most important people in your lives.
But I didn't want to bring it up, you see.
And I know why now, because all the time we were trying to protect the children.
Yes, and you're not protecting them actually, because they're more mature than you think. He feels disloyal, very amicable, civilised. It wasn't as easy for you not to take sides, was it?
I never got a choice. My parents divorced when I was about 8, and my mother definitely did turn us all the children, against my father.
Why?
Because he was a gambler. Because he deserved it, actually. He deserved it. But
from her point of view.
From her point of view.
But he was still your dad.
Yeah. I never actually formed a relationship with my father at all. He's dead now. And I met him a couple of times before he died, and I would have formed the opinions that my mother had anyway, but I did have it shoved down my throat.
And how did that affect you?
In lots of ways, lots, deeply, mainly to do with self-esteem and feeling abandoned, rejected, that basically everything was my fault.
Why?
I did feel that it was my fault because my parents couldn't get on.
Did you feel it was your fault, Anna?
Yeah.
Anna, did you feel it was your fault?
No.
You didn't feel like that. But it has affected you now, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
It's affected you in... I'm coming around this way to talk to you. You just get it affected you in forming relationships?
Yes.
How?
I feel that I can't give all of myself to anybody.
Why?
That's how I feel.
Why?
I was hurt so much by my dad.
How?
And I don't think he realised it at the time.
How did he hurt you?
He was nasty about my mother every time I went to see him. And I would be actually crying before I went in to see my dad. So I didn't want to see him. And I'd only spend an hour there, and I'd tell my boyfriend to come back in an hour's time. No longer than an hour, I just want an hour. Because I just didn't want to see my dad.
How old were you then?
I was 19.
Right, how old were you when they divorced?
It was in that year, but probably 18, 19 it was.
And it affected you then, as badly as this?
Yes.
And yet what you're saying, you now can't form relationships with men?
No, it's really affected me.
How do you know?
I can't.
How do you know that's the reason? What do you mean? How?
I don't know, it just...
What, you don't trust men? Yes,
yeah, I don't trust men, yes, definitely.
I think...
I'm scared of being hurt.
Yeah.
Rejection.
But I think a lot of people need to realise.
I mean, I can totally relate to the situation. It's like, you know, the fear of rejection. You do tend to, if you have a good relationship, you will purposely go out and destroy that relationship.
Yes, I'm very, very cold.
Yeah.
But I think I put a barrier up.
I used to. For a number of years, I would have relationships, but I'd basically go out and pick people who I knew would only be in the country for an allocated people from South Africa.
Why would you want to do that?
Basically because I think I was trying to sort of like punish myself in some way.
For what? What had you done wrong?
Personally, I hadn't done anything wrong. I still don't know to this day if it was anything that I did anything wrong. But it's just with my parents splitting up at the age of 12, my mother walked out, didn't see her for 6 months. I hated her when she did that. My father hated her. And all his hate was coming through me, was going towards her. And I convinced myself that I didn't have a mother. She didn't exist. I never had a mother. But over the years, I've looked at the whole situation of my life and come to understand that there has to be a reason for that quick exit. You know, I mean, I only wish there was a way, but this lady over here, where she actually sat down with the husband, discussed it, and it's been an amicable split. And as you said yourself earlier on, a bit like a parcel. I would rather be a parcel than a pawn. Than a pawn. Any day.
But you're saying you felt rejected.
Yeah.
And that, and because your mother left you, she didn't leave your dad. She left you.
She left me
as well.
She didn't leave my brothers and sisters. She left me.
And you were assenting to what Anna said about relationships.
Well, I mean, the point I want to make is, you know, the people that are going through divorce, I mean, you know, it's a real easy road to, you know, start the name calling and backbiting and stuff. But I think what people really do need to realise is that when a spouse is being verbally abusive towards their spouse, they need to realise that's a personal attack on the child.
Absolutely.
That child loves both parents unconditionally. You know, they need to really think.
It hasn't affected your relationship. You've gone through, Pamela, you've talked about how it affected you, how it made you suicidal, depressed and all the rest of it, how you felt unloved, rejected, and yet you've been married for 36 years?
Yeah, and we're closer together than ever now.
So you didn't go through, why didn't you go through the same kind of things that Anna did and that Jane did, about not trusting men, being scared of commitment, afraid of getting married?
No, I didn't go through those sort of emotions. The emotion that I went through, I wanted to hit back. I wanted to get back at them. But,
that was before you got married?
Before I got married,
yeah.
But...
You were discarding men, like you'd been discarded by a man.
Yeah. What changed? Jane? Was there something that actually happened?
There was. It sounds weird.
She wants to know because she wants to follow you. She does, don't you? She does.
Yeah. So the man I picked looked uncannily like my father. And I wondered if I was going after a father image. And I missed the cuddles, the male cuddles. I missed my dad. My mum used to cuddle me, my sisters cuddle me. I used to walk up the street and I used to think, why me? All the other kids have got dads. Why me? Where's my dad? But my sisters were fabulous. My mum was fabulous. And that's how I got through it. But as I say, later on in life, when I was sort of 16, 17, I just used to go with boys and ditch them. It didn't mean a thing.
I think you can learn a lot when you're a child from a broken marriage and you're very old for your years, and I think it can be of benefit to you in your own later life. I was always determined from my mother's mistakes and broken marriage that if ever and when I got married myself, I'd make a go of it, particularly if we had children. I'm pleased to say I've done that. But no way would I ever...
Are you still married?
Yes, 28 years.
How many?
28.
I thought you said 98 for a minute. We've had some records here. Now, you see, that's a sign of the times, isn't it? Hey, that's a real sign of the times. Do you notice that? He's only been married 28 years, and they give him a round of applause. As if it's something really special.
It is these days.
It is, I say, that's a sign of the times. I mean, that should be taken for granted. All my aunts and uncles have been married for, what, because they married, didn't they? It is a sign of the time. For life. And it's like these two old codgers here, they're married for life. She's 85. You're not 85.
I'm December the 10th.
December the 10th. Oh, hang on. And how old is he? And he's 81. He's a toy boy. I've totally lost my thread here. Oh, yeah. Right. 28 years you've been married, right? You got the round of applause. That would let me astray.
Kids as well, yeah.
I don't want to pry.
Yeah, go on.
But it's relevant to what we were talking about. Are you saying that there have been times when you felt that that marriage should have ended, or you've had enough?
Oh, I've had a difficult time. So every couple does, don't we?
Of course.
I've been determined from my past childhood to make a go of my own marriage.
So I'm saying it's not just that it's been easy for you. You've had it, but you still nevertheless felt that it was important to work at.
We've wanted closer together if we got older, and I think a lot of young couples that would happen to them if they'd only give it the chance.
Have you had problems with him?
No.
Oh, you haven't. Right then. Well, it's easy then. Well, that's lovely, but it does make life easier. Is it easier if you're older, Anna?
No.
Clearly, it's not.
No, it's
not. I would have thought it was.
You know more. You know more. My mum spoke to me a lot about it, mainly because we're both women and women like to chat, so I knew everything. Whereas my dad didn't talk to me about it at all.
She made you a confidant?
Yes.
So that was worse in a way.
So my dad thought that I was on my mum's side.
Right.
So he was bitter and angry and he took it all out on me.
Did you not even try to approach your dad to find his side?
Did I not try?
Yeah.
I've never. No.
See, then you're only getting one side of a story, aren't you? You're not listening to the other person.
Very, very difficult. It would have been very, very, very difficult to talk to him about it.
You never tried to give a try.
He closes up about me.
I don't think it's easier when you're older. I think it's harder when you're younger with the divorce, because I was 11 when my parents divorced, and when I was 12 I ended up getting into drugs and drink and try to kill myself and self-inflicting myself with razor blades and everything because my dad had left my mum, and I don't think it's easier at all if you're older.
I was very, very, very hurt.
Do
He
you
was
think
so
you'd have
nasty.
Do you think you would have responded differently, Jane, had you been 19? You were 15, quite old, but even very vulnerable at 15. There's no good age.
No, there isn't a good age.
I mean, there isn't literally an age at our age. At your mum's age, if your mum's parents, are they alive?
One is.
Right, but you'd be upset now, wouldn't you, if they're alive and
certainly,
divorced?
yes.
You wouldn't go through that. You wouldn't be emotionally scarred like your daughter is.
No, probably not. But you know, the more I hear, it just makes me wonder whether the extent of the damage that's done in future life is dependent on how it's handled.
Yeah, I was just going to say
Well,
how it's
no,
handled.
yeah, I think
definitely
how it's dealt with.
Letitia, is it?
Yes.
Letitia?
Yes.
Is the way you handle it? Of course, the way you handle it is
It is,
important.
yes.
How much can you mitigate the damage by handling it properly?
Well, I think you can mitigate a lot of the damage. I mean, I think the example you gave was a very good one. If both parents will hold on to the fact that they are parents for life and that their love for the children is not altered or affected by the fact that the relationship they have with the child's mother or father has come to an end, I think that makes a huge difference, because it then enables both parents to talk to the children as people as well as parents. I mean, as your parents, you probably won't forgive me for this, but as a man...
It depends what you're going to say.
Yeah, or as a woman, the fact is our relationship has irretrievably broken down. We've stopped loving each other, but we haven't stopped loving you. And if you can communicate that message to the children, I think you've got a very good chance that they will...
And that's what you've got to do. You might have rows, you might have arguments, that's a matter for you too. And it is a shame if you can't work them out and continue with the relationship and you're married. It's a shame for you. It's a real tragedy for your kids. And they don't have to be part of your fights, your battles. It's not their fight, it's not their battle, you are their parents and they need the two parents. If you're going to have to separate, the very least you can do is make sure that the kids understand what is happening, they know they are loved by both parents, because they need both parents, wherever those parents are. And they need to know those parents will love them unconditionally forever. Take care of yourselves.
If you'd like to join Robert in a programme about losing your partner to a sister, call now on 0990 100 771. Did your sister steal your man? Did you have any suspicions about her and your partner? Did you stay with your partner? What effect has this had on the rest of your family? Did you forgive your sister? Call too if you're a woman who fell in love with your sister's partner or a man who had to choose between two sisters.
We'll show you how to keep your kids in the latest gear and still put food on the table. And who'll point out that some products are shrinking while the cost stays the same. Watchdog, the consumer's best friend for shopping. Watchdog Value for Money, Wednesdays at 7 on BBC One.
A summary of the BBC News now on BBC One with Georgiana Gaia.
Hello there.
Environmental campaigners have criticised a decision to return a shipment of nuclear fuel sent to Japan to Britain. British Nuclear Fuels has agreed to take the fuel back after it emerged that staff at Sellafield had falsified quality control checks. The companies also agreed to pay £40 million in compensation. But anti-nuclear campaigners say the return journey will threaten the environment and cause a diplomatic dispute. The Conservative leader William Hague has changed his party's commitment to cutting taxes. At the party's conference last autumn, Mr Hague guaranteed the Tories would reduce taxes if they came to power. But in a newspaper interview today, he said public spending would be prioritised in the time of a recession. The latest inflation figures have just been announced. The headline rate rises to 3.3%, the highest level for 2 years. The underlying rate, which excludes mortgage interest payments, was also up. Rising petrol prices are being blamed for much of the increase. Police have arrested two 12-year-old girls over the abduction of a 4-year-old from a shopping centre in West Yorkshire. The girl was taken away from her mother by two older children in the Piazza Centre in Huddersfield at the weekend. The child was found an hour later. The Orange Order is due to start more demonstrations shortly to protest against the ban on their march through a Catholic area in Drumcree. Last night in Belfast, loyalists threw stones and bottles at the police. They responded with water cannon. An army vehicle was set on fire, and in Drumcree there were more attacks on the barricade near the church. Finally, the Greek government has declared a state of emergency after the outbreak of numerous forest fires, many burning out of control. On the island of Samos, the army has been brought in to tackle the flames. Daytime temperatures remain above 100 degrees, and another rise in temperatures is forecast today. That's it. I'll be back in an hour. Bye.
Good morning to you. We won't have such temperature problems across the United Kingdom, but summer is on its way back after our taste of winter. Skies beginning to clear over many areas of the United Kingdom. We still have a finger of rain from the Isle of Man through Wales down into the West Country, as well as that more prolonged rain leaving the eastern side of East Anglia. So showery outbreaks of rain continuing through the morning into the afternoon, but hopefully it'll dry up, and we'll probably see temperatures up at around about 17 or 18 as a maximum in the south, 16 in Northern Ireland, 15 in Scotland, feeling warmer as the winds ease.
It's a busy morning here on BBC One. There's the camel that thinks it's a human down at the animal park. And then there's the lion in need of surgery. Kate and Paul are down at Longleat. Then join with us at 11 for the start of our summer celebration in honour of the Queen Mother. We're live at St Paul's Cathedral for a special service of Thanksgiving. It's all still to come here on BBC One.
Friends share them.
It isn't an ordinary relationship. I'm scared, Geraldine. I'm scared out of my wits.
Please, I think she fancies me. Families keep them.
He's my son! You got that brother mine!
I love her. I can't help it.
On your head be it.
Lovers hide them.
You can't get enough of me, can you?
Hey, hold that ring. I'll be